But there's just so many opportunities for them to just like amp up everything that already makes that game so interesting to see.
Right.
And I really don't know of any other game since then that feels the way that game feels.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's my number 2.
I love
That's
that.
a great one.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll do a
I think it would
fan-made
be.
sequel.
Yeah, I think it would be the easiest one.
I think it's the easiest to make the changes that would
Correct.
that would punch it up enough.
I think the suggestions you made are like
Yeah.
perfect.
I think it sounds really cool.
Yeah. Plus, it also opens up its to.
Keep stalling, Talon.
No, just
Ryan's checking his phone for his number 3.
For like DLC, you know what I mean?
That look.
New characters, bring Banjo back. You know,
New characters would be great. Hide them everywhere.
that's right.
All the suggestions so far, except for Jared's last one, the ones that you guys have made have been like, how would you?
Too spooky.
No, they're too scary. I can't.
No wonder you can't think of your number 3. You're spooked.
That's
I'm
right.
too scared. Have been like, how would you extend the story? And you keep asking me, how would you like to see that story? Like,
I just love putting you on the spot.
so, like these games that I want to make a comeback are games that I played as a child mostly, or played kind of far back in my story. But so I just want to see like the mechanics brought up to date
Okay.
to breathe life into these games. There's very few games that I played back in the day that I'm like, I wonder what they could do with the story.
Yeah.
But this next game is a game they actually are bringing back, but I still want to talk about it, and that's Fable.
Oh,
Okay.
good one.
So you have a very small window of opportunity here where they haven't really said anything about what the new Fable is.
Yeah,
gonna be.
it's been pretty
anything
under
of that
wraps, and I think that's because it's made by an entirely new team, and they've even after years
Not
of
surprising because it's been like over a decade.
yeah.
Can I just specify that it's made by the Forza?
That's what I was about to say.
Oh,
So wild.
Is it's been several years into development, and they just now recently, I probably 4 or 5 months ago, hired someone from the original Fable team to help with it, which worries me a bit.
Yeah, that
That they're
seems
like,
bad.
we don't know what we're doing.
Hey, we didn't want you
Yeah.
originally, but we are so lost that if you could just jump in here
And I
real
heard-
quick.
real quick.
And I heard it's on the engine of the Forza,
Right.
the latest Forza.
Well,
engine.
to be honest, I don't even know what that means because the latest
Yeah.
Forza it is completely open world.
Yes.
And it is pretty good. Like I like the Forza games a lot. So I don't know what that means for an RPG that is also like an open world adventure.
It
game.
means it's gonna look pretty.
Yeah, that
maybe
is, it'll
like
at
the
least
Forza
have that.
game.
Yeah.
I think it looks its prettiest when you're driving fast. When you take a minute to slow down and you look at the
It's
environment.
beautiful when everything is very blurry.
Yeah.
When
Okay.
you take a minute to slow down, you're looking at the environment. You're like,
Yeah.
will this work? But
So-
that's
so-
just the engine
Okay.
of the game, not like
Yeah.
who knows.
And maybe that's why they're taking so long is because they want to make everything look good, not blurry.
It's because they've spent 6 years. I don't know how long they've spent into it.
Yes.
Into working on it, and they're like, maybe we should have used a different engine.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to rebuild this from the ground
Just
up.
real quick, Microsoft, help.
Yeah. No kidding.
But it's going to be interesting to see. I don't have my hopes up for it.
So initially, Fable is an RPG
Yeah.
that is really all about changing depending on whether you make moral or immoral decisions as you progress through the game. The game has an overarching quest, like it has its own story, right? And then it has tons of side quests. You can go explore and find little stories everywhere. But at its core, this is a game that is made to present you with decision.
Good and evil choices. Fable 2 and Fable 3 didn't deliver like I wanted them to. I thought they were fine.
We disagree on this point, but I'm not going to argue with you here.
What's your stance? Do you think Fable 2 and 3 are better?
I think 3 was a fumble, but I think 2 I enjoyed a lot more than the original. Yeah.
Okay.
I also agree.
Really? Okay. I think the combat in 1 was
It's very
much
different.
better. Yeah.
And I think that's important to note that it is more than likely just a matter of taste rather than one is better or worse.
The combat felt more grounded
Yeah.
in 1. And then 2, it felt really loose, and like the enemies, there just wasn't anything interesting about them. And I get 2 and 3 mixed up because it's been so long since I played them. I remember 3 was the most disappointing because every spell in the game was just another version of the spells you already had. It's just, it is a different look to it. Like I can cast a big fireball or I can cast an ice ball, but like the enemies, like they were just like just dudes, and they didn't really have like elemental weaknesses. And like even when you got the swords, if you think about it, you're just casting another version of the same spell you already have. You can do a version of its AoE, or you can concentrate it into one enemy, and every spell does that, and that's all you get.
I mean, I feel like design-wise, it feels kind of like a fumble to do that in the first place. To be like every spell can be AoE or single target, and they all, it's like, well, maybe it has an elemental weakness, but other than that, it doesn't matter what you're using. Like you're really kind of tripping over yourself to sell yourself short like that. But I think you've picked a really interesting choice because we don't really know anything about Fable 3. Yeah. And Fable 1 was great. Fable 2 is controversial.
What do you mean we don't know anything about Fable 3?
Fable Remake, sorry.
You mean the Fable Remake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Fable Remake. Yes, sorry.
I thought
we don't know anything about the upcoming Fable game.
Yeah.
Which
is just called Fable, I believe.
That makes sense because it's been so long. They're basically just rebooting.
And I think they're actually like doing something with the timeline of the game where we're either like reversing time or like technology's been reset, because I don't think this one is going to have guns and stuff like 2 and 3. So I think they're going.
I'd rather them start over at this point. I don't want them to try and build on this weird, because it's such a rocky history of like 1 good, 2 controversial, 3 fumble. In general, people kind of see the games that way.
Right.
So they could borrow from any of those games, and the game would look wildly different depending on what they borrow from which game.
Correct.
So I would rather them start over and rethink what they want this game to be instead of trying to build on games that came out 15 years ago or whatever.
So what do you want from it?
What do you think it should have?
Fable 1 has a lot of mechanics that just weren't like fully realized, and that is the definition of Peter Molyneux.
It truly is.
Yeah. Is like you can buy houses in Fable 1, which is just like something that I had never done in a game. You can make these good and evil choices.
In RPGs, it's pretty uncommon, and especially back then, it was uncommon.
Yeah. You buy a house and you go on quests and you get trophies from these quests and you can hang them up in your house.
I love decorating a house.
And then you can have a wife in every neighborhood. So there's that.
I love that too.
Yeah, that's right.
Like it felt like the relationship thing was like the more you build up relationships with people, the more you can marry. And like that's the extent of the relationships with people. And it's like that's kind of boring.
Widen that net.
Every character is the same. Like I'm just going to shower you with diamonds. Marry me.
All women love diamonds.
Yeah. Or you can.
Truly is a 15-year-old game.
Yeah. You can marry a dude. You can marry a guy. Doesn't matter. You just give the same gifts to each one, and you'll marry them. Nice. You just gotta have to buy a wedding ring and then give them, and then they say yes if their hearts are a certain point. There's no person like these individuals have no personality.
Less surfaced what is happening. You know what I mean? That game, and it was a product of its time. It's not that they could do a whole lot about that, and that was kind of the design philosophy of the day. Is like you wanted to see all the numbers. You wanted to see how everything was working and how all the clocks were ticking.
Yeah. Right.
I want that like obfuscated a little bit. I don't. Yeah. I want a more organic feeling.
I want to see
meaningful.
I want to see these good and evil decisions I make affect the towns that I visit. Because Fable 1,
100%. Yeah,
you're visiting towns, and they all have these quests, and you can choose what to do. But for the most part, the villages don't change. So I would like to see a different take on that, a more involved take on like your good and evil choices changing the world and not just your ending or how your character looks, things like that.
I would love to see your actions influence like the culture of the towns that you're visiting and stuff, like the world in general changing.
And the characters in these towns being unique.
Yeah.
It's all like you've got the main characters and then all the villagers are just like boring villagers.
Yeah.
And you can marry them.
I mean, you could And you can marry the boring villagers.
Yeah.
You could even have like different cultures throughout the world that like some cultures benefit from evil choices because they're like a cult or something. Like a cult up in the mountains that the more evil everything gets, the more powerful they are, and then you could get better items from them.
Do you know about the evil church in that game?
I don't
In
think
Fable
so.
1, where
I also don't remember those.
you can sacrifice people, but you have to get them to trust you enough. So you'll get people's
You'll throw
build
diamonds at
relationship,
them, yeah.
And then they'll follow you to their doom, unbeknownst to them. You take them to this church, and I can't remember the name of this like group. But you'll just like sacrifice them to an altar. If you give them enough, I think that's where you get the bow. It's like some demonic bow thing that's great.
Interesting. Yeah.
Really
And then there's like another like the other version of that is a church that's the good.
And you have to take the cultists from the other church and bring them to the church.
Yeah.
You just donate money to the point where you're poor.
Of course.
And eventually you get a weapon.
That used to be a huge thing in video games. Like Knights of the Old Republic was terrible about this. Was that like the bad choices were always like,
severe.
do you want to steal all the money from this guy so that you have a ton more money? And then the good choice is like, do you want to give away everything you have?
Yes.
No, I don't want to. Every choice
fine.
boiled down to like, do you want to gain something by being evil, or do you want to lose something you really like by being good?
And that's fake.
Right.
That's
And
fake.
that's a design
Everything
choice
is
that I'm very glad is
borderline-
gone.
It's borderline, like, or not borderline, but it's like very much good or evil.
Yeah, very binary
Right.
in that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
All through the games.
Right.
2 and 3.
and you'll know you're evil because your
3
eyes
has-
are on fire.
3 does
Yeah,
one.
that's right.
3 does something where it tries to push like what's evil, what's good. It has like this big villain in it, which is your brother. That is like terrible. He's like the king over this world, and he's making all these choices that seem bad. And then the twist at the end is, well, you're now in control, and you have to make these choices.
Ooh, I like that.
And
You know I like that.
you now realize why he's making bad choices, and he gives you the reign. And he's like, well, you see what you can do.
Why don't you be me for a day?
And it turns out there's this big threat coming, and he is trying to make preparations for this big threat. And so
Why
now
didn't he just tell everybody that?
You have to figure out, do you want to make people happy, or you want them to all like hate you?
Hate you but be safe.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. And it's been a long time since I've experienced that, so I could have some of these details wrong. But
I would
that's the
love to
gist of it.
see that
Yeah.
played up.
Yeah.
in-
But fully realized.
yeah,
Rather
exactly.
than just
yeah.
like, I have an idea.
Not so black and
I
white.
don't know how
about
to
it. Hey,
execute it.
Peter
And there's a-
Molyneux reference.
There's a few
black and white.
characters. There's a few characters that exist throughout each game that are like immortal or live a long time.
Yeah.
Reaver, I think, is his name. He's in each game, and then your sister from the first game is in, I think, the other 2 games.
Good save.
Because you have a big part of the storyline in the first game is this revenge arc where you find out, like, there's these bandits that kill your parents, and you think kill your sister, and then you find out your sister's alive.
Yeah.
And she's in this bandit camp, and you go and save her, and blah blah blah.
Right.
And then she's in the second and third game, but you think it's her, you're not sure. Then you figure out it is, but of course you're a totally different character. But I think it's the same bloodline. Your character is the descendant. Yeah.
Nice.
It's a very deep well
Yeah.
to
So
go back to.
I listed it just because I don't know if excited's the right word, but I am very interested in
You
see.
are.
See what? Interested. Yeah.
cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
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 Curious to see what they do.
They have a ton of they have a huge pool to draw from.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. It's interesting because you can basically improve that game at every level at this point.
Pretty much.
from
Yeah.
where it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Taylor, what's your number 3?
All right, it's my last one. Number 3. I'm gonna go with something that by next year will be a decade since they've done anything with it. Is Bloodborne.
That's a very good.
What is Sony doing? Sitting on that IP and doing nothing with it.
I'm assuming they can't get
Just
Miyazaki to
play-
come back and do another one because he's too busy doing Elden Ring stuff.
Well, true.
But Bloodborne is Elden Ring is kind of its own beast in my mind, but out of all of the other Souls games, Bloodborne is the closest I have come to finishing a Souls game just because of how cool the world was and the fiction was,
Right.
and the combat felt much faster and much more reactive,
Yeah.
I think, than the other games did. a lot more focus on like stunning your opponent and like making opportunities for yourself instead of waiting for an opportunity.
Yeah.
I would also love to see that. But like, so really quickly,
Yeah.
what is Bloodborne?
Bloodborne, From Software, action RPG,
That's true.
horror Victorian.
Horror, like Cthulhu,
Yeah.
like cosmic horror,
Yeah.
unknown entities mixed with Victorian era,
Yeah.
like plague, basically. Victorian era
Fast Dark
plague.
Souls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, by next year, it'll be a decade since they.
That's wild.
Isn't that
brutal.
crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
just
still a
want them to-
gorgeous game.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. I want
ton of
more
style.
environments, more weapons.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see them introduce the jump mechanic, like
Oh,
they did in Elden Ring.
that's a good point.
I want them to be able to jump. I think
Yeah.
that
Well,
would
and
add to the
there's
fluidity
so much
of that game.
verticality in that game with
Yeah.
all the different
Yes.
buildings and stuff.
It's wild
like,
that there isn't just some jump button in that game.
Right. Yeah. And I just want them to go crazy with it. I just love the setting. I want more varied areas. The bosses. I don't know. Just the whole thing. I just want more of it, and I just don't know why.
I'm right
Because
there
Sony
with you.
loves their IPs,
For sure.
and they pump in a lot of money for them.
Yeah.
But
It's super
Bloodborne-
strange to see their IPs on the Steam store.
Yeah, I know.
You've got God of War.
Yeah, and it's making them a
Horizon
ton
Dawn.
of money.
Yeah.
So I am
yeah,
just
I would
waiting for them to. Everybody's like, I want a Bloodborne remaster. I don't want a Bloodborne remaster. I want a sequel to Bloodborne.
Yeah, I don't want
Yeah.
a Bloodborne remaster.
I
It
want a
doesn't need
sequel.
to be remastered.
It doesn't. I want a sequel to it.
Yeah.
I don't
want a
think it
sequel.
necessarily needs to be remastered either. I mean, you could effectively patch that game to upscale it, and it would be good to go.
Sure.
You don't really need.
I
to
mean, if
do
you
much
play it
more.
on the PS5, it looks great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
You know what I mean?
surprised like when they started pushing some PlayStation games onto Steam that we didn't see Bloodborne. It
Yeah.
was going to sell like crazy.
Oh,
I would have bought it
so-
immediately.
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I would definitely buy it because
Yeah.
just like I said, just for the upscaling of the resolution and stuff.
Yeah.
But is there anything in particular you'd like to see from the story, or any characters you'd like to see return, or okay, just more, just
More of
just
it.
more.
Just more
I
weapons.
mean, I agree
more
because like
enemies.
the Souls games have had so many opportunities to feed into that universe,
Yeah.
Yeah.
bring those characters to
It's
life.
such a
and-
complex and convoluted story though.
Yeah.
That like
Which one?
Where
The
would
Souls
you,
games or the
just
Bloodborne?
Like
Okay.
where would you even start on the storyline for this?
That's what kind of I ended up.
You now a squid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was playing that game
It's
to
wild.
understand what
Yeah.
was happening.
Yeah.
Like,
which
and-
isn't a great way to understand what's happening. by the
Right.
way.
That's the thing. I mean, that's true with all Souls games,
Yeah.
but that you only understand what's happening through characters being introduced as if you already know them, talking about stuff as if you already have talked about it before.
Yeah.
And then items will have weird cryptic descriptions that will help you fill in the gaps of what they were talking about. That's basically how they tell stories in the Souls universe.
Right, yeah.
So if you are going through those games and trying to understand what's happening, the only true way to do that is to read every description of everything and map it all out on your own with a
But don't do
photographic
that.
memory. Or you could go to YouTube and watch a 20-minute video that will just tell you an extremely interesting story that will make
Right.
you wonder why the heck are they trying so hard to hide this?
Yeah.
Which I, on some level, I do enjoy experiencing the story in that fractured way.
Right.
Because it adds such an element of mystery to everything and makes you really feel like you're in a place that has existed before you, which I really like when
Yes.
games don't pretend
I love that about the
it
Souls
revolves around you, or
Yeah.
they don't make it obvious that games revolve around you.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it would be very easy to pull a lot more cool stuff out of that world.
Yeah.
And the whole cosmic horror element is so like pushed back in that game. Like you really don't know anything about it, assuming you don't level up the stat that lets you see them because they're all invisible.
Right.
You don't
Yeah.
really know anything about that element of the game until much later, right? Like they barely talk about it. So
Yeah.
I think that's a great choice because there's just
It's got such a
so many
mix of,
opportunities.
like, a mesh of all these weird.
Yeah.
Like, you got werewolves. You've got these like alien things,
Right,
all in
yeah.
this Victorian era.
Yeah.
It's
It was like a repository for all the ideas he couldn't fit in the Souls games.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, well, what about werewolves? And they're like, no, Miyazaki, come on, we have
Yeah.
enough stuff, bro.
Right.
So,
Jared, last one.
okay, this is my last one. This is also probably a game that you guys have not heard of. It's called
This guy.
I know.
it's called Slay. SLAI.
Okay.
That's an acronym. Stands for, I wrote it down because I can't remember it, Steel Lancer Arena International. And this game is so freaking cool. It is a mech combat game.
Okay.
Similar to Armored Core in the sense that you are like fighting with mechs in this arena. Basically, it's like near future. What happens is, okay, so Slay is basically a game about this sport of the future where they section off areas of the world, different cities, and they're called servers. Basically, originally they created all these robots for combat. It's just a combat sport. Once these units were created, that they used to pilot them for real, and it was so violent, and the like fatality rate and everything was so high that this group called I think they're called FIRA, they came together to like create regulations for this sport, and they turned it into like this global phenomenon, and now everyone controls them remotely. So as you're playing this game, you're like logging in, and it really, I love this. Not everybody's gonna love this, but this game leans so hard into its own fiction, and it is so unapologetically like really holistically trying to pull you into what it would be like to be this dude. So like when you're playing the game, it like boots up, and then there's like an AI that's on this server, and the first time you get in it, the way that you navigate the menu in the game is that it's a virtual world, and you're this little like character that's moving on a path to all the different like shops or areas to fight or whatever. You can even buy music and stuff. Like there's tons of places to go and do different things. But when you first get into that world, it's like stuttering, and I was like, oh no, is the emulator like breaking down? And then the like dialogue at the bottom is like, lag so bad, and then your server blue screens and your computer reboots, and then the AI is like, sorry about that, man. He's like, don't worry, I adjusted the refresh rate so it'll match up with everybody else on the server.
Yeah.
And then so it's like really committed to making this feel like you're controlling this thing from your PlayStation 2.
Okay,
which is
Would you want the comeback to be in VR? Because it sounds like...
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Yes, dude, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, it's like Armored Core in the sense that you're buying parts for your mech and you're building it and everything, but when you first get into the game, you don't even have a mech. You can rent mechs, and you'll basically just get whatever's available. It's just a randomized mech.
Cool.
And you play in these little closed arenas. They're very small, but you pick a server at the beginning of the game, which is like the level that you want to play on, and you can move to the other ones as you go. But the one I chose is like Stuttgart in Germany. It's this place that the climate has gotten so bad in the future that there's been like famines and plagues and all sorts of stuff. So a lot of the world is unpopulated now. Okay. And they designate those abandoned cities as the arenas. So you're going into this abandoned area in Stuttgart that used to be like this big church on top of a hill. And there's all these like interstate things like cut into the stone. So it feels like you're kind of in a diorama because everything is like at a scale where you're this giant robot fighting other robots, but everyone you fight has their own personality, and every mech has its own AI chip that you can buy and put in your mech, and it will talk to you, and they all have different personalities. Cool. And so they all...
So you're saying you can acquire different ones?
Yes,
Okay.
and they're all a different animal, and they're all good for different things. So like dogs are just all around good, but if you want to build a sniper mech,
makes sense.
you can pick like...
Go ahead.
Are you gonna sneeze now too? I'm not cutting this one.
That's right.
So, like, depending on the animal you pick, they'll be good for certain things. Like hawks can see really far, so that adjusts your ability to how quickly you lock onto your target automatically. Like, if you have like a rocket launcher and you're locked on, then it will home in. Otherwise, they just shoot straight.
Oh, okay.
So you can still fire it, but if you want to lock onto targets really far away, you're gonna want an AI chip that is specifically for that purpose. And then as they level up, they will only level up specific attributes based on what they're good at. And then you can actually even transfer them into a new chip and keep leveling them and stuff. Super interesting. All the parts, the upgrade system is heavy or light for everything. So if it's a piece of armor, making it lighter will obviously make it weigh less. It'll make you move faster. It'll make you jump higher, but it'll lower your resistance to everything. It'll lower your armor rating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So you level everything up to make it heavier or lighter, and that will alter overall how your mech behaves. And if you have like a machine gun and you level it down, less damage, but it fires faster.
Okay.
Or if you level it up, fires slower, but more damage.
How's the strategy?
So it's all about finding weapons that you like and then tweaking them to your exact play style. It's really cool, really unique.
It's like what I want from Armored Core.
It's kind of like what I want from Armored Core. And every day, like, they're so committed to this universe that there's like a library of terms where you can go and it will tell you, like, Fear is an agency that was established during blah, 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 and just goes and tells you everything about this world. And then you can learn about who is the top pilot, like top 3 pilots in the world, top 10 pilots on your server, top 10 pilots on like your region. You can keep getting more and more specific. And when you beat those pilots, your name will move up in the ranks. And it's a really cool feeling when the world is so cohesive like that. You really feel like you're making an impact, like you're making a big impression on people whenever you're moving up these ranks. And it's really interesting, like the people will be talking the whole time you're fighting, and they'll be talking to their chips, and their chips will be like either agreeing with them, like they all have different relationships. So it's interesting to see like some of them bickering with each other, and they're like, he's like, I got blown up, you were supposed to dodge. And the other one's like, it's not my fault, you don't know how to pilot your mech, dude. Like, and other ones have like been together for a long time, so they're like very loyal to each other and stuff. Like all the different personalities are really interesting. The approach is really interesting because it allows you to have a really specific type of mech, but the arenas have like bonus points and stuff. So the loop is like you're fighting these specific individuals. Once you've beaten a certain number of them, the boss will come out. Beating that boss will allow you to take a test to increase your permit. Basically, you move up in rank, you get to fight better people. And the arena has all these little like hidden things in it. Like the maps often will have like little hidden areas or really good vantage points that are hard to get to or just not obvious. And there's like little billboards that are kind of, sometimes they're like blending in and sometimes they stand out, but if you shoot them, you'll get bonus points. So it encourages you to keep moving throughout this map and not just like basically camp in a certain area and just snipe people. But at the same time, different people are constantly coming in and out of the arena. Like NPCs will leave and new ones will show up depending on when you're there or what day you're there. They'll have preferences. There's just tons of little intricacies that make it feel like it has so much personality and it's so realized. I would love to see them like expand that out. I think
I'm picturing PS2.
It is PS2.
Did you say that?
They kind of dug their own grave because Phantom Crash is the first game in that series.
Okay, I've heard of Phantom Crash.
And it was on Xbox. It was Xbox exclusive.
Okay.
And that, to be honest, I prefer that one because the music in 2 is so bad. So bad. It's like generic blues music. Like the most generic.
For some reason.
For some reason. And then it'll just be like J-pop or like trance music or something. It's
Nice.
so weird.
Okay.
But
Interesting choice.
yeah, and like I said, you can even buy music to play, which is really funny that they're like, sorry about the music, but you're gonna have to pay if you want better.
Oh,
music.
real money?
Not real money. No.
Oh, okay.
Just in-game currency.
Oh, gotcha. That's not a big deal.
No microtransactions. And this one had multiplayer.
Well,
I
you're
don't think
talking
Phantom Crash
PS2,
had
so-
multiplayer.
Yeah.
So, and it had online play, which is really interesting, but you could do like a multi-tap situation if you just want to have a bunch of friends over. But I would love to see them expand the maps because some of them are very small.
Yeah.
And the chaos is really fun, but I feel like they could really lean into that like Souls-like element of making the map feel like it has all these little secrets to explore. And while you're just running around frantically shooting at people and stuff, you just like, oh, I didn't know you could get up there from here. You know what I mean? Like
Is it mission based? Like where you drop into a mission and when you're done you go.
There are no missions. It is only arena combat, which I personally just have a preference for arena combat, and I think it's hard to find games with arena combat.
Yeah.
So it's like basically every day there's an actual schedule that you can look at in the game that will tell you on Mondays this server will have D rank and below pilots in this map. And the entry fee is X amount. If you get destroyed, you will get the money that you got for each person you blew up minus repairs for everything. So it's very much about like maximizing your earnings each day to try and upgrade your chips and your parts and all that
You
stuff.
don't want to just go in and take a beating.
You do not want to take a... I did that, and you can never go like negative in a fight, but you can go 0, where you've just wasted your entry fee, basically. This will be the end of our episode, I guess. That's everything for us. Guys, do you have any final thoughts before we close up?
No. Well, I'd be curious to see what, listeners or whoever's watching.
Yes, please let
what
us
your
know,
guys',
A, if you can think of any of the games that we were sitting here stumbling over. Or B,
Yes,
if you have a
please
game
help
that you're
us.
like, why haven't they done something with this franchise yet?
Yeah.
Dead franchises, bringing them back.
Yeah.
What would
And I'm sure that we'll do another
version
part
of this
2
later
of
on.
this,
Yeah.
at some point.
There's definitely some games that I would like to talk about needing to come back.
Oh yeah, I've got plenty more in the chamber. I'm ready to fire. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're listening to our podcast wherever you find podcasts. It's available to you. Then check us out on YouTube. It's Did I Save Podcast.
That's right.
You'll get a little bit of extras. You get to see what games we're talking about. Big bonus. We'll have some of that footage up so that you
helps.
can have a little more context. We do our best in podcast form. Thank you to Sam Webster for letting us use his music in our intro and outro. He's great. He has done a lot of really cool work. He has a ton of games. You should check him out if you haven't already. Check us out on... We've got our own TikTok. We've got our own Blue Sky. It's just kind of like Twitter, except better. Much less racist. And then... What do we have? We have another platform, and they're all at Did I Save Gaming. So, or Did I Save Podcast, not Did I Save Gaming. That was my option 2 in case
It's
it was
okay.
taken.
That's all right.
So basically, if you're looking for us, just punch in Did I Save Podcast and see if we're there.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
See that logo.
you'll see this big beautiful logo.
That's all right.
Unless you're listening, then you'll just have to figure it out for yourself.
That's right.
Okay, everybody, thanks for listening.
Perfect.
We'll see you next week. Don't forget to save.
To save, yeah.